Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the live studios here in Radha Lane, soon to be the center of a big Harinam festival that's going to be going on in ISKCON of Houston, right next to Shri Shri Nilamadava's temple, Radha Nilamadava's temple. And I will make a short announcement that I've already made to the locals here, but just for your information, I had an appointment with the surgeon today, and they took out the staples from my arm. I know that doesn't sound very nice, but it wasn't very bad. And I got to chant Hare Krishna into the doctors' and nurses' ears, and we gave garlands to different ones, and they were all, strutting around the office, showing off with their garlands, and one of them had a tiara, like a flower little tiara, and she was the one that took off the staples, and the surgeon got a big red rose and carrying it around. I mean, it was like ecstatic, and they all got prasadam, and they were in ecstasy. Everybody in the whole office was in ecstasy. It was amazing. They were waving at them. I said, Hare Krishna, and they all went, Hare Krishna. I mean, that was swag. I mean, I just learned that word today from some newer member of our cult. Anyway, welcome back, and now we're going to start today into the last chapter of the first canto. Can you believe it? We've almost gone through the whole first canto together just like that. It's going so quickly. Time is passing so quickly. Okay, so before we start, we're going to read Srila Sanatana Goswami's wonderful, deep, philosophical glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And it goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdipi Yusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of light to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Doditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of the Supreme, all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvadasa Vasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Mad Mahadana Mad Nishtadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu Saduta Dayin Adini Chotatakara Hanamunchagadachin Mam Premna Red Kantayospuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, as I said the other evening, the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam is actually the historical events leading up to the speaking of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and it is still a part of the eternal text of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And the title of this chapter, which by the way is the last chapter of the first canto, so it's amazing how fast we went through the first canto, and the title of the chapter is The Appearance of Sukadeva Goswami. Text 1. Sri Sutta Goswami said, while returning home, oh, there it is, the conch shell of Kali. We'll wait till the conch shell is blown, and then we will resist the temptation to go running after the train and buy things off the train. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. I wonder if that train goes onto the microphone very much. Somebody out in there, it does?
Yes, it does.
It does.
Can you have a horn?
Yeah, it's powerful. But Krishna's conch shell is more powerful.
Yes.
Okay. Sri Sutta Goswami said, while returning home, the king, Maharaj Parikshit, felt that the act he had committed against the faultless and powerful Brahmana was heinous and uncivilized. Consequently, he was distressed. Purport. The pious king regretted his accidental improper treatment of the powerful Brahmana who was faultless. Such repentance is natural for a good man like the king, and such repentance delivers a devotee from all kinds of sins accidentally committed. The devotees are naturally faultless. Accidental sins committed by a devotee are sincerely regretted, and by the grace of the Lord, all sins unwillingly committed by a devotee are burnt in the fire of repentance. Text 2. King Parikshit thought, due to my neglecting the injunctions of the Supreme Lord, I must certainly expect some difficulty to overcome me in the near future. I now desire without reservation that the calamity come now, for in this way I may be freed of the sinful action and not commit such an offense again. Purport. The Supreme Lord enjoins that brahmanas and cows must be given all protection. The Lord is himself very much inclined to do good to brahmanas and cows. Go brahmana hitaya cha. Maharaj Parikshit knew all this, and thus he concluded that his insulting a powerful brahmana was certainly to be punished by the laws of the Lord, and he was expecting something very difficult in the very near future. He therefore desired the imminent calamity to fall on him and not on his family members. A man's personal misconduct affects all his family members. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit desired the calamity to fall on him alone. By suffering personally, he would be restrained from future sins, and at the same time, the sin which he had committed would be counteracted so that his descendants would not suffer. That is the way a responsible devotee thinks. Now this is a very important point, because these personalities are showing us how to think, how to feel, how to will, and how to act properly. And in this case, how to correct ourselves. How you have to feel in order to want to correct ourselves, what to speak of, correct ourselves. And the backup that we get from the laws of nature if we behave properly and learn to think properly. Okay. The family members of a devotee also share the effects of a devotee's service unto the Lord. Maharaj Prahlad saved his demon father by his personal devotional service. A devotee's son in the family is the greatest boon or blessing of the Lord. Text 3. I am uncivilized and sinful due to my neglect of Brahminical culture, God consciousness, and cow protection. Therefore I wish that my kingdom's strength and riches burn up immediately by the fire of the Brahmana's wrath, so that in the future I may not be guided by such inauspicious attitudes. Purport. Progressive human civilization is based on Brahminical culture. God consciousness, and protection of cows. All economic development of the state by trade, commerce, agriculture, and industries must be fully utilized in relation to the above principles. Otherwise, all such so-called economic development becomes a source of degradation. Cow protection means feeding the Brahminical culture, which leads towards God consciousness, and thus perfection of human civilization is achieved. The age of Kali aims at killing the higher principles of life, and although Maharaj Parikshit strongly resisted the domination of the personality of Kali within the world, the influence of the age of Kali came at an opportune moment, and even a strong king like Maharaj Parikshit was induced to disregard the Brahminical culture due to a slight provocation of hunger and thirst. Maharaj Parikshit lamented the accidental incident, and he desired that all his kingdom, strength, and accumulation of wealth would be burned up for not being engaged in Brahminical culture, and so on. Where wealth and strength are not engaged in the advancement of Brahminical culture, God consciousness and cow protection, the state and home are surely doomed by providence. If we want peace and prosperity in the world, we should take lessons from this verse. Every state and every home must endeavor to advance the cause of Brahminical culture for self-purification, God consciousness for self-realization, and cow protection for getting sufficient milk and the best food to continue a perfect civilization. Text 4. While the king was thus repenting, he received news of his imminent death, which would be due to the bite of a snake bird, occasioned by the curse spoken by the sage's son. The king accepted this as good news, for it would be the cause of his indifference toward worldly things. Purport. Real happiness is achieved by spiritual existence, or by cessation of the repetition of birth and death. One can stop the repetition of birth and death only by going back to Godhead. In the material world, even by attaining the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, one cannot get rid of the conditions of repeated birth and death. But still, we do not accept the path of attaining perfection. The path of perfection frees one from all material attachments, and thus one becomes fit to enter into the spiritual kingdom. Therefore, those who are materially poverty-stricken are better candidates than those who are materially prosperous. Maharaj Parikshit was a great devotee of the Lord and a bona fide candidate for entering into the kingdom of God. But even though he was so, his material assets as the emperor of the world were setbacks to perfect attainment of his rightful status as one of the associates of the Lord in the spiritual sky. As a devotee of the Lord, he could understand that the cursing of the Brahmana boy, although unwise, was a blessing upon him, being the cause of detachment from worldly affairs, both political and social. Shamika Muni also, after regretting the incident, conveyed the news to the king as a matter of duty, so that the king would be able to prepare himself to go back to Godhead. Shamika Muni sent news to the king that foolish Shringi, his son, although a powerful Brahmana boy, unfortunately had misused his spiritual power by cursing the kings unwarrantedly. The incident of the king's garlanding the Muni was not sufficient cause for being cursed to death, but since there was no way to retract the curse, the king was informed to prepare for death within a week. Both Shamika Muni and the king were self-realized souls. Shamika Muni was a mystic, and Maharaj Parikshit was a devotee. Therefore, there was no difference between them in self. oneself to go back to Godhead, or to get rid of the material existence, the repetition of birth and death. Thus, in the system of Varnashrama Dharma, every man and woman is trained for this purpose. In other words, the system of Varnashrama Dharma is also known as Sanatana Dharma, or the eternal occupation. The system of Varnashrama Dharma prepares a man for going back to Godhead, and thus a householder is ordered to go to the forest as vanaprastha to acquire complete knowledge, and then to take sannyas prior to his inevitable death. Parikshit Maharaj was fortunate to get a 7-day notice to meet his inevitable death. But for the common man, there is no definite notice, although death is inevitable for all. Foolish men forget this sure fact of death and neglect the duty of preparing themselves for going back to Godhead. They spoil their lives in animal propensities to eat, drink, and be merry and enjoy. Such an irresponsible life is adopted by the people in the age of Kali because of its sinful desire to condemn Brahminical culture, God consciousness, and cow protection, for which the state is responsible. The state must employ revenue to advance these 3 items, and thus educate the populace to prepare for death. The state which does so is the real welfare state. The state of India should better follow the examples of Maharaj Parikshit, the ideal executive head, than to imitate other materialistic states which have no idea of the kingdom of Godhead, the ultimate goal of human life. Deterioration of the ideals of Indian civilization has brought about the deterioration of civic life, not only in India, but also abroad, which means the whole rest of the world. The whole rest of the world is abroad compared to India. Text 5. Maharaj Parikshit sat down firmly on the banks of the Ganges to concentrate his mind in Krishna consciousness, rejecting all other practices of self-realization, because transcendental loving service to Krishna is the greatest achievement, superseding all other methods. Purport. For a devotee like Maharaj Parikshit, none of the material planets, even the topmost Brahmaloka, is as desirable as Goloka Vrindavan, the abode of Lord Sri Krishna, the primeval Lord and original personality of Godhead. This earth is one of the innumerable material planets within the universe, and there are innumerable universes also within the compass of the Mahat Tattva. The devotees are told by the Lord and his representatives, the spiritual masters or acharyas, that not one of the planets within all the innumerable universes is suitable for the residential purposes of a devotee. A devotee always desires to go back to home, back to Godhead, just to become one of the associates of the Lord. Vaishnavas, and thus he was not at altar of his lotus feet. The river at once became sanctified. It is especially mentioned herein that Maharaj Parikshit took shelter of that particular river, which is beautifully flowing, carrying the dust of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, mixed with tulsi leaves. Lord Krishna's lotus feet are always besmeared with the tulsi leaves, and thus as soon as his lotus feet contact the water of the Ganges, Load the audio.
No, actually we can go back and listen. But for life it's difficult. If the interruption is too long, we can't follow.
But whenever it has interruptions here, you go back and watch it, it cuts out a lot.
It's
The
okay.
same.
When you go back and watch later, it's okay. But life is difficult. Very difficult.
Okay, we got no choice at the moment. Hey, Bhakti John.
Can I go over the
Yes, you can.
Hare
Can
Krishna.
you conversation?
Hare Krishna.
Yep. You can still read it from there.
Okay, in case it's now it's still going on, now it's not going on.
Now it's not.
Now it's live. All right, we're having a little technical difficulty, but from the broadcast. But I've been reassured that when you listen, after later on, if you listen, then it should be all right. It should be not so interrupted. So we're now on text 7, and what they're doing is they're going to record separately the audio just in case. Hare Krishna. How you doing? You still doing that big one? The big
Yeah,
job?
They kind of cut the manpower down a little bit because we have too many people. Now I got to work a little more.
Oh, jeez. That's what you get for being good at what you do.
Yeah,
You get more of it. You get more of it.
it's all right.
Yeah. Okay, can we start now? Okay, text 7. We've just learned that the Jamuna is 100 times more sanctified than the Ganges. Text 7. Thus the king, the worthy descendant of the Pandavas, decided once and for all, and sat on the Ganges bank to fast until death, and give himself up to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who alone is able to award liberation. So, freeing himself from all kinds of association and attachments, he accepted the vows of a sage. Purport. The water of the Ganges sanctifies all the 3 worlds, including the gods and the demigods, because it emanates from the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, Vishnu, Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna is the fountainhead of the principle of Vishnu Tattva, and therefore shelter of his lotus feet can deliver one from all sins, including an offense committed by a king in Antoi Brahmana. Maharaj Parikshit therefore decided to meditate upon the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, who is Mukunda, or the giver of liberation of all description. The banks of the Ganges or the Jamuna give one a chance to remember the Lord continuously. Maharaj Parikshit freed himself from all sorts of material association and meditated upon the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. And that is the way of liberation. I'll repeat that. The banks of the Ganges or the Jamuna give one a chance to remember the Lord continuously. Maharaj Parikshit freed himself from all sorts of material association and meditated upon the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and that is the way of liberation. To be free from all material association means to cease completely from committing any further sins. To meditate upon the lotus feet of the Lord means to become free from the effects of all previous sins. The conditions of the material world are so made that one has to commit sins, willingly or unwillingly. And the best example is Maharaj Parikshit himself, who was a recognized, sinless, pious king. But he also became a victim of an offense, even though he was ever unwilling to commit such a mistake. He was cursed also, but because he was a great devotee of the Lord, even such reverses of life became favorable. The principle is that one should not willingly commit any sin in his life and should constantly remember the lotus feet of the Lord without deviation. Only in such a mood will the Lord help the devotee make regular progress toward the path of liberation and thus attain the lotus feet of the Lord. Even if there are accidental sins committed by the devotees, the Lord saves the surrendered soul from all sins as confirmed in all scriptures. Swapadamulam Bhajatak Priyasya Chaktanya Basyav Hari Hari Padesha Vikarma Yach Chot Patitam Kritanchit Dunoti Sarvam Vidisani Vishtaha. That's Srimad-Bhagavatam 11.5, 42. Text 8. At that time, all the great minds and thinkers, accompanied by their disciples and sages, who could verily sanctify a place of pilgrimage just by their presence, arrived there on the plea of making a pilgrim's journey. Purport. When Maharaj Parikshit sat down on the banks of the Ganges, the news spread in all directions of the universe, and the great-minded sages, who could follow the importance of the occasion, all arrived there on the plea of pilgrimage. Actually, they came to meet Maharaj Parikshit, and not to take a bath of pilgrimage, because all of them were competent enough to sanctify the places of pilgrimage. Common men go to pilgrimage sites to get themselves purified of all sins. Thus, the places of pilgrimage become overburdened with the sins of others. But when the sages visit overburdened places of pilgrimage, they sanctify the places by their presence. Therefore, the sages who came to meet Maharaj Parikshit were not very much interested in getting themselves purified like common men, but on the plea of taking a bath in that place, they came to meet Maharaj Parikshit because they could foresee that Srimad-Bhagavatam would be spoken by Sukadeva Goswami. All of them wanted to take advantage of the great occasion. Text 9 and 10. From different parts of the universe, there arrived great sages like Atri, Chaivana, Sharadvan, Arishtanemi, Brigu, Vishishta, Parashara, Vishwamrita, Angira, Parashuram, Uttaya, Indrapramada, Idmavahu, Medatiti, Devala, Arishtisena, Bharadwaja, Gotama, Pipalada, Maitreya, Aurya, Aurva, Kavasha, Kumbhayoni, Dvaipayana, and the great personality, Narada. Purport. Now we're going to have another summary study of these different sages. O great sage, Chaivana, a great sage and one of the sons of Bhrigu Muni. He was born prematurely when his pregnant mother was kidnapped. Chaivana was one of the 6 sons of his father. Bhrigu. When Brahmaji was performing a great sacrifice on behalf of Varuna, Maharaj Bhrigu was born from the sacrificial fire. He was a great sage, and his very dear wife was Puloma. He could travel in space like Durvasa, Narada, and others, and he used to visit all the planets of the universe. Before the battle of Kurukshetra, he tried to stop the battle. Sometimes he instructed Bharadwaj Muni about astronomical evolution, and he is the author of the great Bhrigu Samhita, the great astrological calculation. He explained how air, fire, water, and earth are generated from ether. He explained how the air in the stomach works and regulates the intestines. As a great philosopher, he logically established the eternity of the living entity, Mahabharata. He was also a great anthropologist, and the theory of evolution was long ago explained by him. He was a scientific propounder of the 4 divisions and orders of human society, known as the Varnashrama institution. He converted the Kshatriya king Vitahavya into a Brahmana. Vashishta, see Srimad-Bhagavatam 196. We already heard about Vashishta before. Parashara. Parashara. He is the grandson of Vashishta Muni and father of Vyasadeva. He is the son of Maharshi Shakti, and his mother's name was Adrishati. He was in the womb of his mother when she was only 12 years old. And from within the womb of his mother, he learned the Vedas. His father was killed by a demon, Kalmashapada. And to avenge this, he wanted to annihilate the whole world. He was restrained, however, by his grandfather, Vashishta. He then performed the Rakshasa killing yajna, but Maharshi Pulastya restrained him. He begot Vyasadeva, being attracted by Satyavati, who was to become the wife of Maharaja Shantanu. By the blessings of Parashara, Satyavati became fragrant for miles. He was present also during the time of Bhishma's death. He was spiritual master of Maharaj Janaka and a great devotee of Lord Shiva. He is the author of many Vedic scriptures and sociological directions. Gadi Sutta, or Vishwamrita, a great sage of austerity and mystic power. He is famous as Gadi Sutta because his father was Gadhi, a powerful king of the province of Kanyakubja, part of Uttar Pradesh. Although he was a Kshatriya by birth, he became a Brahmana in the very same body by the power of his spiritual achievements. He picked a quarrel with Vashishta Muni when he was a Kshatriya king and performed a great sacrifice in cooperation with Matanga Muni, and thus was able to vanquish the sons of Vashishta. He became a great yogi, and yet he failed to check his senses and thus was obliged to become the father of Shakuntala, the beauty queen of world history. Once when he was a Kshatriya king, he visited the hermitage of Vashishta Muni, and he was given a royal reception. Vishwamitra wanted from Vashishta a cow named Nandini, and the Muni refused to deliver it. Vishwamitra stole the cow, and thus there was a quarrel between the sage and the king. Vishwamitra was defeated by the spiritual strength of Vashishta, and thus the king decided to become a Brahmana. Before becoming a Brahmana, he underwent severe austerities on the bank of the Koshika. He was also one who tried to stop the Kurukshetra war. Angira. He is one of the 6 mental sons of Brahma and the father of Brihaspati, the great learned priest of the demigods in the heavenly planets. He was born of the semen of Brahmaji, given to a cinder of fire. Uttatya and Samvrata are his sons. It is said that he is still performing austerity and chanting the holy name of the Lord at a place known as Alokananda on the banks of the Ganges. Parashurama, see Srimad-Bhagavatam 196. Uttatya, one of the 3 sons of Maharshi Angira. He was the spiritual master of Maharaj Mandata. He married Bhadra, the daughter of Soma, the moon. Varuna kidnapped his wife Bhadra, and to retaliate the offense of the god of water, he drank all the water of the world. Woo. Medatiti, an old sage of yore, an assembly member of the heavenly king Indradev. His son was Kanva Muni, who brought up Shakuntala in the forest. He was promoted to the heavenly planet by strictly following the principles of retired life, Vanaprastha. Devala, a great authority like Narada Muni and Vyasadeva. His good name is on the list of authorities mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna acknowledged Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He met Maharaj Yudhishthira after the battle of Kurukshetra, and he was the elder brother of Domya, the priest of the Pandava family. Like the Kshatriyas, he also allowed his daughter to select her own husband in a Swayamvara meeting, and at the ceremony, all the bachelor sons of the rishis were invited. According to some, he is not a Sita Devala. Bharadwaja, see Srimad-Bhagavatam 196. Gautama, one of the 7 great sages of the universe. Sharadvan, Gautama, was one of his sons. Persons in the Gautama Gotra dynasty today are either his family descendants or in his disciplic succession. The Brahmanas who profess Gautama Gotra are generally family descendants, and the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas who profess Gautama Gotra are all in the line of his disciplic succession. He was the husband of the famous Ahalya, who turned into stone when Indradeva, the king of heaven, molested her. Alaya was delivered by Lord Ramachandra. Gautama was the grandfather of Kripacharya, one of the heroes of the Battle of Kurukshetra. Maitreya, a great rishi of yore, he was spiritual master of Vidura and a great religious authority. He advised Dhritarashtra to keep good relations with the Pandavas. Duryodhana disagreed and thus was cursed by him. He met Vyasadeva and had religious discourses with him. So in the Mahabharata and other Vedic literatures and Puranas, many, many details of all these personalities are discussed, and different things that happened to them and how it all links together and fits together as the history of Yes, a special rank of Rajarshis from different dynasties of sages. When they all assembled together to meet the emperor, Parikshit, he received them properly and bowed his head to the ground. Purport: the system of bowing the head to the ground to show respect to superiors is an excellent etiquette which obliges the honored guest deep into the heart. Even the first great offender is excused simply by this process. And Maharaj Parikshit, although honored by all the rishis and kings, welcomed all the big men in that humble etiquette in order to be excused from any offenses. So this is a very important point. I'd like to make a comment here. The system of bowing the head to the ground to show respect to superiors is an excellent etiquette which obliges the honored guest deep into the heart. It means that it isn't a mechanical process. Okay, you guys had a fight, one devotee had another fight, or pay obeisances, hug each other, and that's it. Well, there's something because the devotee feels, may want to forgive or whatever. But unless it's done from the heart, then it doesn't touch the heart of the other person, which doesn't empower the other person, the offended person, to forgive the offender, and therefore it just stays superficial, and the offenses are not actually overcome or forgiven or nullified. So in this way, again and again and again and again, the Bhagavatam teaches us how we're supposed to think and feel and will and act in order to stay purified and in order to become eligible to be going back to Godhead. Because without doing this, you can't think of Krishna at the time of death. It's not possible. Purport: the system of bowing the head to the ground to show respect to superiors is an excellent etiquette which obliges the honored guest deep into the heart. So sometimes, when devotees are in a hurry, they come in, get down on the ground as fast as possible, get up as fast as possible, and run. Or they just go like this. They used to touch the floor, now they just touch the knees, or just go like this, And it's supposed to be the same thing, but it's not the same thing. One has to feel it. Even the first great offender is excused simply by this process. And Maharaj Parikshit, although honored by all the rishis and kings, welcomed all the big men in that humble etiquette in order to be excused from any offenses. Generally, at the last stage of one's life, this humble method is adopted by every sensible man in order to be excused before departure. Such deep, deep lessons here. Before you leave, you should humbly beg forgiveness for anybody in your life that you've ever offended. That's the way to become prepared. In this way, Maharaj Parikshit implored everyone's goodwill for going back home, back to Godhead. After all the rishis and others had seated themselves comfortably, the king, humbly standing before them with folded hands, told them of his decision to fast until death. Purport. Although the king had already decided to fast until death on the bank of the Ganges, he humbly expressed his decision to elicit the opinions of the great authorities present there. Any important decision, however firmly fixed, should be confirmed by some authority. That makes the matter perfect. This means that the monarchs who ruled the earth in those days were not irresponsible dictators. They scrupulously followed the authoritative decisions of the saints and sages in terms of Vedic injunctions. Maharaj Parikshit, as the perfect king, followed the principles by consulting the authorities even up to the last days of his life. Who assembled together because of Maharaj Parikshit's fasting and death were quite anxious to see him, for he was going back to Godhead. Maharaj Parikshit could also understand that the great sages who assembled there were all kind to his forefathers, the Pandavas, because of their devotional service to the Lord. He therefore felt grateful to the sages for being present there at the last stage of his life, and he felt to the puffed up Okay, we'll stop there. Then now he's going to offer some prayers and speak a little further to the assembled sages and saintly persons who came to see him and pay their respects before he departs. The departure of a devotee is very auspicious. And the departure of a pure devotee is all auspicious. All right, so let us turn our attention to our hearts and our minds and have some reflection about what's going on here, what we just heard. Anything that's stuck in your mind? Yes, Hannah.
So in the spiritual world, there's innumerable Vaikuntha planets, and then there's Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna's abode. Is Goloka Vrindavan more sanctified than the Vaikuntha planets? If so, this is just like an analogy. If so, in the Vaikuntha planets, would all of those killed in the battle of Kurukshetra go there, and a person like you go to Goloka Vrindavan?
It depends on what their relationship. Like even when Lord Chaitanya was here, anyone that saw him would be overwhelmed with Krishna prema. And but if in the heart of that particular devotee, of one particular devotee, he was attached to a particular form of Krishna, like Lord Ramachandra, for instance, and in some cases, as his worshipable deity. And at the end, he said, I will become your Nishinga, your Rama, your Vraha, or whatever. But for now, I want you to help me in my mission to deliver this pure love of Braja, of the Brajvasis for Krishna. Now, there are some interpreters who say that that is an indication that Lord Chaitanya would grace or would promote or would allow a person of one rasa to go to another. But there's other evidence, not necessarily, because when Anupama, who was the brother of Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, he was a great devotee of Lord Ramachandra. But he was the younger brother, so he was very respectful and worshipful of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. So they wanted him to come and hear and chant about Krishna, because they were devotees of Lord. That I glean from these different examples is that, there aren't any limitations actually in the spiritual world, not like here in the material world. Things don't operate on the same principle. So generally, the general principle is that everyone has a relationship with Krishna fixed in the heart, and when we become purified from all our impurities and all our anarthas, and we engage in the loving service of the Lord in sadhana bhakti, then we find out gradually who we are in the spiritual world, what our individual relationship is with Krishna, and it's fixed. So, because all the souls were there fighting in the battle of Kurukshetra, and because Krishna was there, doesn't necessarily mean that they went back to Goloka Vrindavan. They could go back to one of the Vaikuntha planets. They could go back to Dwarka, because even in Goloka, there's 3 divisions. Well, it's a big question. It's a good question too. Really good question. There's 3 divisions. There's Braja, or Vrindavan, and then there's Mathura, and then there's Dwarka. So the relationship between Krishna and the residents of those 3 places is different, in the sense that in Vrindavan, in Braja, the relationships are, even though everyone knows perfectly well that he's the supreme absolute truth, their love, their spontaneous love for him is so strong that it eclipses that knowledge, and they almost never remember. And even if they do remember for a moment, they just immediately forget, and they want to play with him, or they want to, to protect him, or they want, whatever their relationship is, have some affection with him. But in Mathura, it's mixed, because Mathura is very close to Vrindavan, and some of the residents go back and forth. And therefore, the example that is given is of Devaki and Vasudeva, the mother and father of Krishna, who gave birth in Mathura to Krishna. And it was mixed because, frankly, what Devaki had to go through. First of all, her so-called cousin brother. What was the relationship exactly? Cousin brother? Yeah. Cousin brother, yeah. Tried to kill her on the day of her marriage. If that's not enough, And then, one after another, he killed each one of the sons before Krishna was born. So now she's terrified. But at the same time, and so therefore when Krishna appeared, she offered these elevated prayers as if he's God, because he appeared as a four-hand Vishnu form. But then she became afraid, please, if you show this form, Kamsa is going to come and kill you. So here's where the mixture is. If someone knows that Krishna is God, Vishnu, nobody can kill him. But she's thinking out of her motherly affection, he could come and kill you, so please change yourself into a baby. And then he did. And then he told Vasudeva, carry me across the river. So here's Vasudeva, who is so honest. He never told a lie in his whole life, never did anything dishonest or tricky. He's being told by Krishna, you just do this. And he did. So all these relationships and feelings, between Krishna and his devotees are there. And in Mathura, they're mixed. And sometimes Krishna will appear in a four-arm form, just like he did in his birth to Vasudeva and Devaki. And sometimes, and then when he goes to Dwarka, it gets even a little bit more to the side of awe and reverence, and he appears, in four-arm form sometimes to certain devotees, more often. And of course there, he has wives. He doesn't have lovers. He just has wives. And everything's legit, so to speak. Right? So, like that. And then, there's a planet where Parthasarathi lives. Arjuna and Pandavas and Krishna. So it's not so simple and black and white as that. It depends on the individual relationship, it depends on the Leela, it depends on the circumstances. And whether or not one can change from one to another, I don't believe that you can make an absolute statement about that. But we do know that the general rule is that we have an individual relationship, and we should wait for that individual relationship to be revealed to us. How? Through the constant hearing of the Bhagavatam, over and over and over again. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur termed this kind of hearing incidental hearing, meaning that incidentally, as you go through the Bhagavatam, like already we've heard, about certain things about Krishna, Leela, when Arjuna was talking about Krishna, and in the third canto again, we'll hear Vidura and Maitreya and Uddhava speak about Krishna Leela, So all the way through, you hear bits and bits and bits and bits, and you hear all the other incarnations, so you get a very clear picture of just how powerful Krishna is, who Krishna is in relationship to his original form. And this way, by the purification and by the relationships that are developed, by sincere, offenseless hearing and chanting of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, eventually one's heart becomes specially attracted. There's a special and a natural appreciation for one of the pastimes of the Lord or another, and one's heart goes there. And that's an indication, the beginning of an indication. And then by further hearing and further hearing, then we become attached to a particular personality who is a servant of a relationship in a particular relationship, and we want to serve that person. And that way we get trained internally, and then we meditate on that, and eventually it's revealed to us what our rasa is in the spiritual world. Yes.
Follow-up question.
As Jayashree is asking a question.
From Nectar Devotion, we are
From the Nectar Devotion.
We are the follower of Rupa Goswami.
We are the followers
Should
of
we
Rupa
actually
Goswami.
wait for the highest conjugal relationship and back to
No, you can't. You can't do that.
We can't.
No. That is condemned. You can't think yourself into a relationship. Just because Rupa Goswami is a gopi,
Yeah.
and we think that we have to become a gopi to be a follower of Rupa Goswami, it's not necessarily true, but maybe it is. But you can't decide on that with your mind. In other words, if you follow all of the instructions in the Nectar Devotion, he explains,
Yeah.
first of all, get initiated, then, and then be trained by the spiritual master, and follow in the footsteps of the great acharyas, etc., etc. You have to go through all the processes before you can get to that stage, finding out who you are. Otherwise, Anupama would have become a gopi. When Sanatana talking to other elevated descendants of theirs in our line, world acharyas, level persons, who indicated who they were, but they themselves didn't. So we may learn the science and learn how to analyze what is higher and what is more intimate or whatever, but Prabhupada never emphasized it. He would say, in the spiritual world, there is no imperfections. There are no impurities. The devotees of Vaikuntha, they have Krishna Prema. They just don't have the same variety of it as in Goloka Vrindavan. But you can't say they don't have Prema. And there are so-called authorities who say like that. And therefore they think, you can't think about, Lord Ramachandra, otherwise you'll lose your status as a gopi or whatever. But what do the gopis think? They asked Krishna to tell them the stories of Prahlad and Dhruva particularly, because they were young boys and they were attached. They liked to hear about the stories of the great souls who had different relationships with Krishna. So we shouldn't we shouldn't think that you can't think your way into that position and reject everything else about Krishna, because that will distract me from my original relationship with Krishna, which is a gopi, by the way, before we even know it. And even if we were, the gopis, what did they think? Radharani is the topmost devotee without a shadow of a doubt. And what does she think? Everyone else is a devotee. No. Everyone else is a devotee. Only I am not a devotee. Not I am the highest devotee and all of you are lower devotees. And that's going on. I know. I live right down the road from Radhakund. I hear it all the time. Therefore, we should be very careful, and we should accept our Srila Prabhupada as our founder Acharya, as the embodiment of all the teachings of all the previous Acharyas to us, and we should follow in his footsteps, follow in his mood, and all these things will be revealed to us with time, when it is the proper time. You can't gate crash the rasa dance. Even Lord Shiva tried. Even the goddess of fortune tried. Couldn't do it. Okay. I'm getting the high sign. 3 minutes, not late, not bad. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Parikshit Maharaj. No. You should turn it off before, that way. I know you do it, but I like it another way. Okay.